everyone, I'm Lisa Walton and welcome to Quilt Stories. Today I'm talking to Melbourne quilt artist Tania Tanti, who is doing the most beautiful painted quilts, and she's sort of making a name for herself at the moment, which is really great. So I just knew that I had to talk to her and find out more about her quilts. So welcome, Tania.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I'm just going to switch to the screen sharing so we can see your beautiful quilts. This is you painting this beautiful quilt called The Beginning, and we're going to talk about it and find out about your inspiration and how you work and how you quilt and how you exhibit, which is actually quite different to quite a lot of us as well. So this is a painting that you started many years ago.
So I put this together. It's just a very simple drawing. I was playing around one night and just was having a bit of fun. And I always liked some ideas in it, the circles with the borders, and just the wavy, the river feel of being in the river with beautiful trees around you. And I've always just had that in the back of my mind to do for a quilt. I mean, this is probably 10 or so years ago that I did that drawing. Just always stuck there, those colours.
Sometimes we do have just little bits of paper stuck up on a design wall or in a book that one day we're going to make a quilt out of this.
Yeah.
It looks like you've achieved it. So you started sketching again?
Yes, so I had been doing some black and white drawings, just having a bit of a play. And when I did this one, I could see putting it on a quilt and painting it and using thread to bring it to life. And all the border with the circles around it, I referred back to that drawing that I did and thought about the orange and the green. And I just love that clash of the colour. And that's where it all began, my journey with painting quilts.
Do you have a sketchbook or do you just doodle or?
I do. I have a few sketchbooks because I lose them all the time. So I have about 10. And I often do little black drawings, and then I just build them up. If I like the concept, I just build on it and start to see a quilt within that drawing.
I've got a photo here of your studio, which is just beautiful. It's very large, and I can see you have a Bonina Q20, which I have as well, which just perfect machine for this sort of work, isn't it?
I love it. Yep. It's a great machine.
And lots of light, which is good. And the quilt that's actually behind you at the moment is the one hanging on the wall, which is a very interesting one as well. Is that the same technique? Is it painted and then quilted?
It's actually wool. It's all wool tops, and I've punched it together with a little Janome embellishing machine. Yeah, it's quite complex, and I made a whole quilt top out of it, which was quite a challenge. And then I quilted it all down with embroidery thread and used wool couching over it, and it was really interesting to do. I loved it.
Back to the beginning. Here we go. So this is a whole cloth painted quilt.
Yes, it is. Yes. So I use just calico. And yes, and I just roughly sketched this one. I did know, had the design already, and then just started adding the paints. The paints and the colours aren't planned. That all just is part of the process as you go. I just sort of start to put down a colour and then add another colour and build it up from there.
Have you had formal art training?
I did study fine art for a couple of years. I failed drawing, and I dropped out, unfortunately.
Okay.
I got a cadetship in photography, so I went off and did photography.
Oh, interesting. These are a few shots just showing the development of the quilt. So the river and the circles have started to appear, and that clash of the orange and the green is really vibrant, isn't it?
Yeah, I really loved that orange and green. It was good fun to put together, and then just slowly building it up and adding in some interesting parts to it. And I guess when I was doing this, when I was painting it, I'm just imagining, tropical islands and, even the Amazon, like just beautiful forests and beautiful colours and beautiful wildlife there, and just sort of building it up and thinking about that as I'm doing it.
It's getting busier and busier.
Yes, and it gets more and more complex as it goes along. And then once it's all painted, then I've started to put the thread on and secure it down, sandwich it like a normal quilt, and then just start adding the thread onto it and creating all the different textures and shapes.
The threads that you use.
Yes, so I use a polyester embroidery thread. I use the same colour in the top as I do in the bottom for my machine. And sometimes I double the thread and sometimes I use a single thread through the machine. It just depends on the effect that I'm wanting at the time.
In this close-up, where there are thicker threads, that's 2 threads or just doubled back?
It's both. So it is 2 threads and I've also doubled back on that one.
And do you just do that for additional texture?
I do, yeah. So it just adds a bit more texture and it just helps give a little bit more colour and interest to that area as well.
I can see where you've unpicked. So it's always really good to see where people who are really good at what they do sometimes make errors.
I do. I change my mind a lot as well, but I have found that with fabric painting that you can't change your mind too often because it's not as forgiving, the fabric. And so you have to be quite careful with when you're painting. It's not as forgiving to paint over as if you were painting on a canvas. Once you put the colour down, it really does have to stay that colour. I have pushed it. I have changed colours, which can be difficult. And yes, I do. I never practice or decide on the way I'm going to quilt until I actually do it. And sometimes I start and I think, oh, that's no good. I don't want that. I'll change it. And yeah, I unpick.
Do you bury your threads or do you cut them or do you do it as you go or at the end?
I don't bury my threads. Every quilt that I start, I think I'm going to bury the threads. So I start to do it and leave the threads out to bury. And then about 10 different colours in, or not even 10, probably 5. And I think, no, I'm just cutting them. It's just another thing, isn't it? So I lose patience with it, which is probably a bit naughty, I suppose, but it finishes off okay. I don't have any major issues with it looking, seeing all the ends of the threads in the middle. Yeah.
Here's sort of the water appearing, really, isn't it? All that lovely rippling.
Yeah, so as I paint, I regularly put it back up on the quilt wall and just constantly actually just looking at it, looking at where it's going, getting a good feel for, if I'm enjoying an area or not. So with this, I did quilt in parts of the water, and I was actually thinking of just leaving it like that, but as I kept on adding the thread into the other areas, it wasn't working. I felt that that I needed to paint it a bit more. So I actually ended up using the pattern of the quilting, and then I started painting in between those quilting lines and adding in a bit more to bring up the quilt, just add that interest into it. That's the first time I did it. And then I felt like it needed a bit more punch. So then I added in more. And, yeah, so it's just a constant adding detail, adding in little things. Even if there's a section I don't like, I will go back and really unpick all that heavy quilting. And it can take a really long time, but I do it. I don't know. You've got to be happy with every part of it, I think.
You do. So what size is this quilt?
It's 75 by 100 centimetres or 30 by 40 inches. And it's not a massive quilt, but it took a long time, I think, because I was really learning with this one as I went as well, and just really enjoying all the detail as it grew.
Beautiful detail of your quilting, which is just really lovely. A few shots of this.
And this one was created on my domestic machine, actually. I didn't have my Q20. I started doing this. So I used my domestic machine. So anyone can, you don't need a Q20 to make a quilt like this. You can use your domestic machine.
Is this a size sort of range you normally work in?
I'm all over the place, to be honest. I generally work larger, and I keep on thinking I need to work a bit smaller because obviously the larger quilts can take a lot longer to do. This isn't a large quilt for me, but it's probably a bit more on the smaller side. But I'm all over the place with sizes. I don't have any consistent sizes. I don't really plan ahead enough for sizing.
I'm just looking at your water and the addition of the paints, and now I can see that you've even done more quilting within the different colours as well. So that's quite interesting. Mad, but quite interesting.
It is a bit mad, isn't it? I think all quilters, that's the bit we love though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I always sort of feel that a quilt's not finished until it's finished, and it will tell you when it's ready to be complete. And it looks like you work the same way. You said, I'll do this, and then oh no, just do a little bit more. So,
Yeah.
but it's really great.
I did put this quilt down a lot. I was a bit frustrated in a couple of areas, and I just thought, oh, it's not working, and I put it down and then start something else. And I finished a lot of other quilts in between finishing this quilt. And I'm not sure if it's because it was my first quilt. So I just I learned more as I went, and maybe I kept looking back and thinking, oh, that could be better. I don't know. But eventually I did pick it up and think I am going to finish it. And I'm very glad I did.
I think this is the final shot of the quilting. And I can see that you've actually used quilting to highlight the pattern in between in those little, the lime green. It's the background that's quilted, and the little shapes are popping out.
Yes.
So that's additional texture as well, sort of reverse of what people would normally do.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes I do use contrasting threads, but often I actually do use a thread that is fairly similar to the colour I'm using. It just depends on what's happening at the time as to whether it works or not.
What weight is that? About a 40 weight, the polyester threads?
I think it's about an 80 weight. It is quite thin, and that's why I do double it. I think.
Right.
I'm not very good with my weights with threads.
So here we have a section of the quilt, and the reason we've got this photo is because you framed it. So would you like to tell me a little bit about the framing idea?
Last year when COVID hit and I ended up and I closed my photography business, I had been wanting to slow down for a while, and I just thought, well, I'm going to stop and I'm going to make lots of art quilts and have an exhibition. And part of that decision was I'm going to have an exhibition and I'm going to frame them all. And I am very lucky to have a husband who is extremely handy and had all the tools in the shed to put the frames together. And
that was my next question, actually, because framing is not cheap. So yes, very lucky.
Yeah, it's not cheap. And because I'm not consistent with size either, every single frame is a different size. So that helped that I could just show my husband, and he has been teaching me, but he's great at it. So he did all the framing for the exhibition. The idea was, I think, to just make everybody, I mean, we all know they're art quilts. We all know the work that goes into them and consider it art. But unfortunately, I think just for general public, I think that it's really nice to frame them and just get them looking at them a bit more seriously as art.
Here we have the exhibition, and all your work is framed. It's lovely to see the red dots. Always lovely to see red dots. So where was this exhibition?
So this exhibition is in Altona at the Arts and Community Centre, and it's called the Lewis Joel Gallery. It's only about a 5-minute drive from home, and it's such a beautiful space. And I really wanted to have an exhibition close to home and just, yeah, brighten things up in the community. So it's been, it was only open for 6 days, and then we were closed down for a while, but it is open again. And even in the 6 days, it was really exciting and fun to talk to people coming and visiting, and really enjoying that there are quilts, being pleasantly surprised about it.
Are there more than the 5 quilts that we see here, or was it?
Yes, so there's a dozen in the exhibition, 12 quilts altogether, and they were all made last year. But the one on the left there, that was my 3rd quilt I think I started, but I finished that one first. And so that was probably the earliest finished one. Yeah. But the rest
So we've got some detailed shots of some of those quilts here.
Yep.
Definitely a style that you developed very nicely.
This quilt was spontaneously created. I didn't draw this one at all. I just had an idea of some colours, a bit of a concept I wanted to do, and just started painting that one. So half of the quilts in the exhibition are just spontaneously done onto the fabric, and just at the time what colours you feel like and shapes you want to create. And the other half are a bit more planned. They do have a sketch to them or an idea behind them.
And you use quite a few different brands of paints, but they're all opaque?
They are, and I mix them all the time. So one of the things when I do paint is I'm always mixing colours, just always sort of adding a little bit of, a bit more white or black or pink or whatever it is to sort of bring out the colour that you're after at the time. I don't often use them straight from the bottle.
Okay, so they're all fabric paints, but they're all quite thick, aren't they?
They are quite thick, yes. I do water them down a little bit when I put them on, and I often do 2 or 3 coats just to get that finish right on them. And I can, halfway through a quilt, go back and paint on it again to just bring it up a bit as well.
Is your water again, which is lovely.
Yes.
Slightly different.
Yes. I think you can see some Indigenous art inspiration in a lot of art quilts actually, but I love Indigenous art, and I love the colours and the patterns, and I'm definitely inspired by that, and I think you can see that in these ones as well.
Quite a different sort of colour range here.
Yeah, so this was a spontaneous one as well, and this is my favourite one in the exhibition actually. I just love I love the bright colours, and I love the orange.
I like this one. Reminds me of Little Shop of Horrors.
Ah, yes. Yeah, it's very popular, this one. Everybody gets drawn into it. It is the largest piece in the exhibition.
And it's sold too, I think. I saw the sticker on that one.
It was the second one sold. So I was, thrilled. I was hoping to sell 1 piece in the exhibition, and I've sold 5 now, so I'm thrilled.
I bet.
Yeah, it's exciting. And this was a spontaneous one as well. And it's called Establishing Roots. And it really is about, I felt when I was doing this one, that it's really about establishing my roots in textile art and really having found my way and my style and technique that I like to do.
Is that water again? It's lovely to see sort of the repeating motifs happening. Definitely a style. This next one's a bit different.
Yes, that one. It is, isn't it? That was a bit of a COVID moment.
This next one is very different.
Yes, yeah.
Is this piece?
It is. It's all piece. I did do a improv lessons with Irene Roderick last year, and Irene just gave me the confidence to really have a play with improv piecing, but it's really about, I think it's just giving you the confidence to go ahead with improv piecing. And I started to create a few characters in my quilts. And this one is a wandering stitcher. And I just started thinking about just wandering all around the world, going to visit so many countries and seeing all the different textiles in the world, that I hope we can all go and do again soon.
Me too.
Yeah.
And this one is very different, and
Yeah.
this is pieced as well.
It is. So it's all fully pieced. And the piecing it's a completely different challenge to painting on fabric. It's just got so many little bits and pieces, and it could have been so many different things to what it is. But it's really interesting with improv piecing, just like painting. I mean, you just keep working on it until you can really get a good feel for it, and that's what you want, that's what you're looking for in the quilt. Yeah, it's great to see them come alive.
And what's this one called? It's bigger, I assume.
It's a long name. This one's called the Short-Assed Quilter, with platforms and with royal connections, because it's got a bit of a
That is a long one. And the final quilt that I've got here is similar in style, another improv piece. Does this one have a long name as well?
No, this one's called Frenchmen Can Dance. It just reminded me of, a French man with his accordion and having a bit of a dance. Really fun to put together. I really enjoyed them.
So the quilt on the chair behind you, is that a quilt in progress?
It is a quilt in progress, yeah. So I was going to hang it up, but it's all over the place at the moment. So I just hung it behind the chair.
So you've sort of got two distinct styles now, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. And it's I enjoy mixing it up. I think it's nice to have a little bit of a change in between them. Yeah, some days you just want to play a little more with fabric.
So what's next for you?
What's next? Another exhibition. I'm going, yeah, so I'll aim for another exhibition next year. I definitely want to keep doing a new series with the fabric painting. And so I'm working on that at the moment, developing a whole series. Just keep on creating. I've got a lot more people to make with the improv quilting. I'd like my wandering stitcher to reappear at some point in another quilt. I think that would be fun.
Okay, well, this has been fascinating. It's really lovely. It's been great to see how you work, and the use of paint on quilts. I'm a great one for using paint on quilts, but I haven't done any whole cloth ones like you. I think that's a really great direction to look at. Then there's all that fabulous spaces for quilting, which is even better, because I think I enjoy the quilting more than anything else.
Oh, yes, I love quilting.
Yeah, you sort of just get lost in that zone, don't you?
Definitely.
I know that you don't have a website yet, but it's coming in the future, and I'm sure it'll be a very popular one because you can put more work for sale there and sell more work. But I know you're very active on Instagram, and the links to your Instagram page are below. And I'm sure everyone's enjoyed watching the progress of your work. And please consider subscribing. There's a button that's going to come up here to subscribe, and please subscribe and do the thumbs up, and please write comments. We love to read comments, and it just makes us really realize that people are out there and interested in what we're doing. So I'd like to thank you so much, Tania, and it's been really fun to get to know your work.
Thank you, Lisa. I've really enjoyed being on Quilt Stories. I'm so excited to be on Quilt Stories because I'm a huge fan. And
thank you.
I binge Quilt Stories regularly. I go over old episodes and everything.
There's so much to learn, isn't there, how different people work. And when you were talking about not tying in all your threads, I couldn't help thinking of Jane Sassman, who religiously ties in everything. And I love her work, but her patience just astounds me. I look forward to seeing what you create next. And thanks everybody for watching. So bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.